Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 2:30, so I'd like to call the call to order the Parks, Trails, Recreation Committee. And I'd like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Item 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion that the agenda of the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee meeting of October 3rd, 2023 be adopted as presented? Motion. Judy. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 3, adoption of minutes. May I have a motion that the minutes of the Special Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee meeting held June 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented? Motion by Carol. And any discussion? No. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Item 4, public participation. Is there anybody that'd like to speak? No. Okay. Okay, moving right along, we'll go to item 5, new business. Item 5.1, Royal Bay Latoria South Quarry Park Plan Amendment. Do I have a presentation? Yeah. Sorry, Nafis, how do you say your last name? Yeah. I have it rushed in. Sorry, how? Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay.
Hi, everyone. As you may know me already, but just a quick introduction. I'm Nafisa Rashidi-Onfar, and I'm Parks Planner of the City of Colwood. Today I'm presenting the Latoria South Quarry Park Amendment. And the rationale behind it for the committee and for consideration of recommendation to the council. So I start with the adopted plan back in 2022. Latoria South Parks Plan was adopted by council in April 2022. This plan outlined the framework for the overall landscape and open space network in Royal Bay area. And Gablecraft Homes, that they are already over here, they plan to begin construction in spring 2024. And what is the rationale behind the amendment that we are bringing forward? After Latoria South Parks Plan approval in 2022, Council has approved the Beachlands Plan, previously known as Royal Beach Plan, which contains a public amphitheater. And the second one is a public stage is recently built in the Common. It's at the corner of Rydal Straddle Way and Latoria Boulevard. The other reason is there is a growing desire for an enclosed dog activity area that it was expressed by the president in Royal Bay. And the last one is due to the Royal Bay Secondary School that is adding a mountain bike academy with the adjacent elementary school. So there has been a growing desire for the Gablecraft team and the community to have the bike skills park. So these factors resulted in Gablecraft reviewing the elements of the Quarry Park, which is close to the area. And they are proposing a new element replacing the amphitheater with the bike skill park. So to moving forward and advancing the amendment that we are bringing forward, gauging a community interest on bike skill park and enclosed dog run park was required, and 2 engagement events were held by Gablecraft Home. The reports are presented to the committee, and it's already summarized in the staff report. Based on the feedback gathered from the 2 events, respondents showed overall support for the inclusion of bike skill park and pump track feature in the future Quarry Park. However, respondent support for the enclosed dog play area was not actually clear. So this slide shows the previous adopted base plan for the Quarry Park that includes the amphitheater in the northern side of the area. And this is the plan that is reviewed by Gablecraft, and the amendment that is proposed is shown in this slide, which is showing the bike skill park, which is replaced with the amphitheater, and some of the reorientation and adjustment to the multi-use pathway that it was previously proposed. And all the required details and all the drafts are presented to the committee, and we provided some options for the committee to consider to recommend it to council. But staff recommend that Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee consider recommending to council that the Loteria South Quarry Park landscape conceptual design conceptual plan amendment be approved. And thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So Amanda, do we need to make a motion, make a recommendation, like put forward a motion before discussing it? Just because there's a few like options here, so. That's fine, okay. Okay, so I guess I'll just open up to if anybody has any questions, to go ahead.
Is that it? Yeah, so I think it's a really good change. I would have 2 comments, and I'm not sure that they're appropriate to this committee, but I would say that the public washrooms that were mentioned in some of the public engagement, that should go in somewhere in there. And I would like to speak about this area 2, which is just a lawn, and that's been added to that space. And I was thinking that it would be very good to have that as either a pollinator meadow instead of just another lawn, or possibly even a water feature, which would make maintenance less expensive and would help to bring ecological values to that space. Yeah, I noticed one of the plans that were at the public participation had something like that in the plan, and I don't see it on here. Here it's just been kind of put into a lawn. So I would like to make that comment.
Thank you. Carol?
Yes, I see many valuable features to the proposal, but I would like to make an amendment to the amendment. I do see the value in having an off-leash dog park. Latoria Creek Park is on leash. Havenwood Park now, as passed by council, is on leash. We may have up to 15,000 residents eventually in Royal Bay. We need an off-leash dog park, for sure. There's so much pressure on the ecosystems in Latoria Creek Park and Havenwood. I've seen with my own eyes. We need a place for people to take their dogs where they can let them run free, off leash. And if area 14 or the meadow or the grass area there could be used in some way for off leash, I would highly recommend that and would like to make an amendment to the amendment to include the skateboard park and an off-leash park. I don't think that the public really had an opportunity to voice their opinion to a great extent on this, and to say that it was not clear. I didn't get a chance to vote on it in the public forum that they had. So I think there might be other people that didn't have a chance to speak on that. So I'd like to speak now in regards to that, I'm very much in favor of it. I also like the comments made as part of that area being a pollinator area. I think that's a very valid point. Also, I would vote in favor of eliminating the amphitheater. I want to be just a little bit of clarification that there's definitely going to be an amphitheater down at the beachlands, down at the waterfront. Then if that's the case, that helps me make my decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I think we'll come back to the amendment and just let people speak. But I did have a question, and maybe Ben might be able to answer it. From my understanding today, we're here just, well, not just, but we're here because of the previously approved plan had the amphitheater in it. And in order to progress this forward, we need to make a decision to take it out and, go with the bike skills park. But also, I guess at this time, that's kind of what the focus is. It's kind of been broken up a bit in piecemeal. So does that mean that the dog park's not an option in future? Does that mean that there's no options for the washrooms, or is that just something that we haven't got to yet? That's my question.
I think Mr. Gilcraft can speak to that. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and committee. My name is Ben Mycroft from Gablecraft Homes. Just wanted to give a quick bit of background to answer your question, Chair. So the specific purpose for our application to this committee, which hopefully would get to council, is to amend. I think we're happy to discuss and I think take forward any of the recommendations or considerations of this committee. But the specific ask was a simple and single amendment to the parks master plan. And I'm wanting to separate out the parks master plan kind of high level objectives from the very specific on the ground details that will come out of the plan. So the issue that we've come across is that we are motivated for our own, we want to have amenities. We learned the hard way on the initial phases that it's better to build that park right up front. And so we're actually wanting to start to do all the dirt moving and infrastructure work starting right away, with landscaping to kind of take effect in the fall so that we could open that park phase 1 next year as quick as possible. That's to support the existing community and also self-interestedly, it just helps us with our development. So the issue right now is that the plan that we've presented to staff for consideration of all the details does not have an amphitheater, and it does have a bike skills park. And it does actually have an enclosed dog area, a dog park area, in the plan that we've submitted to staff. But where I'm just not asking council to change the master plan to include the dog park. We're just wanting to simply change because the staff can't approve the bike park right now, basically, and our plan is stuck. So I'm just trying to get this little tweak done to the master plan, and that would allow us to proceed with the bike skills park, the kids pump track, delete the amphitheater, and then we have there's a lot of I'm not sure, I live in Saanich myself, and there's a lot of uncomfortable politics around the dog off leash and dog enclosures right now, if you're following the news there. So I just felt it was more practical for us to not request of council and this committee for the dog park, but we do intend, and it is on the plan that we've submitted to staff for review. So we're just hoping to, your comments are very well received and are welcome in general, but just wanting to kind of, at the end of the day, we're looking for this recommendation to make that adjustment. And as far as other amenities such as the washroom facility, which I agree from all of our engagement with the public and the washroom facility that we collaboratively, I would say, the city of Colwood built along with Gablecraft Homes in Meadow Park Green, where we built the facility and the city used funds collected from developers, topped up by us, to end up with a really nice bathroom facility. So I'd like to see amenities like that come to the park. However, those would be above and beyond our base requirement. And we're willing to be partners with the city and work together on making those kinds of things happen. But they would be, what we're doing is allowing for the possibility of those things to be in the future. So making sure there's power, water, and drains in the right spots. So that, things like a bathroom could be added when the time is right, but they're just above and beyond our requirement. So that's, I guess, a bit of the background. Did I answer the question? No.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I should go to Katrin. I should have mentioned that she's joining us via Zoom.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I certainly was happy to read this amendment for several reasons. I think mountain biking particularly, is a growing activity and an increasing sport. So thinking ahead, we have the opportunity to plan here for decades of recreation. This makes imminent sense that the residents of Royal Bay would be able to recreate literally on their doorstep without having to drive to some of the further parks. So I'm very much in favor of that. The amphitheatre clearly would be doubling up if we have the assurance that there would be such a provision. I would just like to flag, and given what we've just heard, maybe a kind of sidebar comment, but I'd like to flag that the loss of the amphitheatre, according to the graphic at least, looks like it would be loss of green space. The amphitheatre looks like it was green, and a bike park, of course, would be hard standing. So just to flag that in our overall view of what we are doing environmentally here. And I would really like to echo Judy's comments, which really tie in with that. I cringed a little bit, I'll be honest, when I read in the report lawns and fertilizers, and thinking about our climate and our ever-increasing and lengthening droughts. I would really love to see us not even use the word lawn, maybe talk about green space, which would give flexibility to what that develops into, and look at ways that we could increase rather than decrease that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna go to Kimberly.
Okay. I love biking, so a bike facility sounds great. I just wonder if we've looked at the usage of the new bike facility at Juan de Fuca and whether or not, how many people are going to be, served using that in terms of, is that very, very, I don't even know, but is that very, very popular? Is that something that, is, because I know there's differing types of biking. There's biking, and then there's the subset of mountain biking. So just wanting to, kind of get an understanding for how much need there truly is for that. I was at one of the events where you collected information, or Gablecraft collected information, and it wasn't presented in the way that, where it's like, oh, do you want a bike park? It was kind of like, what do you want? And it was kind of open-ended, and people put all sorts of different things on a big chart. And the idea of just having, focusing in on that bike thing, I wonder what other things were, were not considered, because the way that it was not, it was very open-ended in terms of, soliciting, people's feedback, and kind of they could write, and I saw some kids writing, bike, park or whatever big on the chart. So if that was what was, how it was solicited, I'm just curious as to how that came to be. And was there consideration for some of the other things that were on there? I know one of the things in our agenda is to look at is we're going to be hearing more about the multi-use courts. I've seen those are extremely popular. The new ones at Dunsmuir, they are, that was great project, and we would love to see, I think, more of those in the community that could be used across a variety of different sports to handle that type of usage, because there's nothing like that can be used and that's open to the public all the time, as that's a school facility during the day. So there's just a little bit of concern about the bike on my part, just as to whether or not it was, there's other things, and is it the dog park that could possibly be there instead? I think Carol makes an excellent point that is severely needed, some, off leash and closed space. So.
Did you want to answer some of those questions, or if you're able, or?
I think I can speak to that a little bit, but I believe that their team that they've done the engagement, they're already here. Yeah, and then they can actually speak to that. But on page 2 of the report, the staff report is based on the report that we were provided with Gablecraft. And apparently they had 4 key themes by the time they were sharing with the community through those community engagement. And one of them was the enclosed dog run and bike pump track, and some other like sport fields. These are the key things that they are shared with the community. The other one was sort of washroom and other facilities that people need. I believe that one of the other committees mentioned about it, and sort of like the play structure design option. So these are the options that it was shared with the community, and based on the reports and based on the respondents, they get the most feedback about the bike skills park and pump track. But I can have Ben here that he can actually speak more. Yeah.
Kimberly. Yeah, you are right. We had 2 different engagement events that were sort of ancillary to. We had the sports day, and we also had the big Easter event. Mm-hmm. So I can't recall which was which. One was more open-ended, sort of what do you like? And however, the other one was more structured. The second one, we had more narrowed down options, but there was actually 2 components to it. So as the developer funded, so basically the amphitheater was for several developments where we proposed an amphitheater. Developers like amphitheaters for some reason. I think, it was no longer appropriate and had to be replaced with something. And we have developed the perspective that and I think this park, even in the planning documentation, is really there's a lot of natural park in Colwood, or, right next door, we've got Latoria Creek Park, we've got Meadow Park Green. And so this one was really viewed more as an active recreation, more of a sports and recreation focused park. And so that was kind of the lens when we're looking for a replacement consideration. You are absolutely right. Those multi-use sport courts are enormously popular. And we heard loudly and clearly that the public would like one. But we had them divided into two boards. So there was really the replacement for the amphitheater option, which is, some different considerations were floated. And then there is the second category of, there's a list of things we're required to provide in our development agreement. And then there's a list of things that are identified as essentially amenities that would be in addition to our base requirements. So bathroom, multi-use sport courts, improved sports fields, sort of like turf fields, and the lights and all those sort of things are beyond the scope of what we could provide as a private developer. However, they are clearly desirable to the public. And what we were also doing in that public consultation was attempting to kind of zero in on some of those amenities that the city of Colwood and Gablecraft should consider together for future opportunities. So if for example, the city is successful in grant applications, I know the Saanich Peninsula Rec Center has a very popular, accessible multi-use sport court that was funded primarily through a grant from Canadian Tire Kids Play. So it's our perspective that, and we have allowed for space in phase 2. It's not shown today because we're really talking about amending the park's top level plan, not the specific detailed plan that would go to staff. Is those are things that we'd like to see, but we wouldn't be providing ourselves. So those are things that are going to be needed for this community. And there has been consideration given to that. And there's a process through which the city is now finally kind of getting this development cost charge for parks improvements activated. I know that's imminent, in addition to the parkland acquisition DCC. And then there's additional levels of funding from senior levels of government for many of those opportunities. So what we are leaving is a room for those amenities, but we're not offering to do that in the space of the bike park area. The second consideration is that we have the reason why it was an amphitheater and why it's now a bike park is we're on a slope right in there. It grades right down off that ridge. And so we're looking for a use that can work on a slope. And so the bike park made natural sense as you run downhill.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that the bike park, it coincides nicely with the school district plans, just because we've, my kids went to Royal Bay and they actually had to be bused to soccer fields at the time, like when they played soccer, when those sports academies were organized, just because they didn't have soccer fields nearby. So when those kind of amenities are closer, it's really great for the schools, in my opinion. So you don't have to bus them places, same with lacrosse and the hockey program and stuff, because a lot of the amenities were in Langford. So we seem to be doing a bit better with planning and with throughout the development of this, in my opinion. I just wanted to say that I think we're not seeing the whole plan. And so what I understand what Ben is saying is that, the washrooms and this dog park are kind of, they're there somewhere, but they're just not in this discussion now. So I guess would that be something you could take feedback for the city in regards to the other things that we can't see right now? Or should we even be discussing that?
I've never been to this committee, but maybe I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Jasmine Hernandez. I'm the Director of Development Services and Approving Officer for the City of Colwood. And so maybe for some context as to how we go about approving improvements on parkland, I'll walk you briefly through the process and why we're finding ourselves here today. for an amendment to the Latoria South Parks Plan. So as Ben has outlined, when the rezoning negotiation took place for the rezoning of Latoria South, there were some negotiated developer pay improvements that were embedded into a development agreement. So we call that's a legal document that sits on their title and commits them to the delivery of very specific features. And none of those features included the amphitheater, but the amphitheater was a feature that was a topography, land formation. It was one of the deliverables of the terms of reference of that development agreement is delivering a feature that would work with the topography of the land, as Ben mentioned. And when the developer got to developing that actual master plan for the park's deliverables, that's when the idea of an amphitheater emerged and where that concept was embedded into that plan that got endorsed by council. Now working through the details of those plans and then looking at doing conceptual design work, it was identified that that amphitheater, since there's an amphitheater proposed for Royal Beach lands, that it was probably a different, more suitable use that we could propose on the Latoria South Parks Plan. So we're not duplicating elements in such a close proximity on these neighborhoods. And that's why they're coming forward, because we want to make sure that the plans that are public are embedding the right expectations and people don't come back and say, well, we were promised an amphitheater. We want to set the record straight that we're having a conversation about shifting the focus of the arts and performance and amphitheater type concept to Royal Beach, and then keeping a youth, amenity, and sports field theme around Quarry Park. And so the portion of Quarry Park that you see today is phase one of a delivery that is larger than that. But because the delivery of parkland gets done through subdivision and through creating development around these parklands, it is the first concept, like the first half is what is being designed and developed and fully actualized over the next few years. So the focus will be on that first phase. Further to that, so the dog park and the various elements that are not necessarily tied to terms of reference, those staff takes guidance from the City of Colwood Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which was a wholesome, first of its kind for Colwood, engagement with the community to identify what amenities are missing. How do we compare to the region? How do we compare to other municipalities? And through the engagement, what are our areas of opportunity? And within those, mountain biking facility and amenities for youth was included, a dog park that is appropriately located, not near environmentally sensitive lands, not near a nature park. Though that criteria is embedded into our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So in addition to having a plan that guides Latoria South, we have an overarching City of Colwood Parks Plan that sets objectives, and that went through extensive consultation with stakeholders and the community, and it's already giving us criteria and objectives and goals to look for. So there is a dog park in the plan. It's just not, I guess we're not seeking further comment on it because we already have comment. We have guidance from a council endorsed plan, which is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So we're seeking guidance on the elements that are unclear or the ones that are changing from those that we had firmed up in a document.
Thank you for that explanation. It's helpful. So, thank you for all your comments. Oh, you're still, but I think we just, we should stick with the recommendation that, or a motion. So I'm just gonna, is there any other comments or discussion that anybody? No, I think I'm just gonna call the motion or ask for the motion that the Parks, Trails and Recreation Committee consider recommending to council that the Latoria South Quarry Park Landscape Conceptual Plan Amendment be approved. Can I get a motion? Okay. Chris? And is there any further discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5.2, Mr. How do you say it? Beauvillier. Beauvillier?
That's
Urban
much-
Forest Strategy Update.
Much easier.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Gordon Devilliers, Parks Manager. I'm here today to do an update on the urban forest strategy. And I have the urban systems consultant, Catherine Barris, here with me to give the presentation. It might be a little bit of a review for most of you. We did a presentation as part of our engagement with the environment community this past week, and there were several members. There were some representations from Scenic, from Friends of Havenwood, Habitat Acquisition Trust, for a workshop on the urban forestry. So, and it's much the same presentation, so a little bit of review, but great. The more questions that are asked and the more public forums we can get, some more input is great. So as part of my report, I'll just say that we are currently engaged in workshops with the different communities within Colwood, some public consultation around our tree bylaw, and doing some tree canopy projections, more detailed tree canopy projections that I'm sure Catherine will be able to speak more to. So unless there's any questions on the report, I can get Catherine to start the presentation. Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Catherine Barris. I'm a landscape architect and planner with Urban Systems, and I work a lot in the realm that overlaps landscape architecture and planning, of which urban forest strategies is one. And it's really a great area to work in, especially these days, because the urban forest is so tied to climate resilience. So I think I'll go through fairly quickly, since quite a few of you have seen this already in one of our presentations or another. So who's at the helm here for slides?
That will be me.
Okay, good. So we'll go through them sort of. Hopefully you can kind of tell, and I just by what I say. So yeah, so today we're going to give an overview of what we found in phase 1, which was done last year, and what we're doing in phase 2. And yeah, we can carry on. So we completed phase 1, like I said, last year. And in that project, we measured the extent and characteristics of the urban forest, gathered some information on trends and stressors. We looked at your existing policies and kind of set the stage for actually doing the strategy, which is what we're involved in now. So yeah, actually this one, I think, rather than go through the list of tasks, I'm going to come to these in more detail through the presentation, so we can just keep going. So we looked at the interconnection with other initiatives at the city, like the OCP, the Low Carbon Resilience Action Plan, and the Natural Asset Inventory being the key ones in terms of sort of overriding high-level policy and things that we could interrelate with. And then a bunch of those other plans also have things to say about trees. So we looked at those as well. For the purpose of the urban forest strategy, we will define the urban forest as being all the trees and associated vegetation on public and private property, including the soils. Yeah, so this is including all the trees within the city, which is not the same as what the bylaw covers. So just wanting to point that out. So the urban forest strategy will be a broader document looking at the entire urban forest. I think most people are well aware of the values of the urban forest. There's a lot of press about it these days, which really helps our cause, but these fall into the categories of environmental, social, and economic values. Trees just generally make a city better. With development come a lot of challenges. So canopy loss, fragmentation, and then the challenges that trees have when they're competing with development and utilities. There's a need to maintain trees, which gets harder when they're in an urban environment. And in general, balancing the urban forest with higher densities is a challenge. So we looked at all of these documents and just to see what they say about trees, because the tree bylaw isn't the only one that it's important to look at. So I'll carry on here. So for the tree protection bylaw, we dug into a lot of detail and we compared it to the bylaws of Victoria, Saanich, View Royal, Metchosin, and Sydney. And we really looked at all the components of what's in a bylaw. So what's its scope, the definitions, tree replacement, planting standards, what happens on site, and then the application requirements. And I'll come back to some of our recommendations based on that. Our analysis, we did two different ways looking at the tree canopy. So this map is showing you an analysis with an online tool called iTree. The benefits of iTree are it's really quick and easy to use. And because we're using the same method, we can compare years. So what we did is we Gord and co went to the GIS people and looked for really good air photos within a reasonable spread. And so we got air photos for 2007 and 2021, and we ran the iTree canopy analysis on that. And it showed that within that period, the tree canopy went from 42% to 37%. But we also had access to LiDAR, which is more detailed than an air photo. It's kind of an air photo that shoots rays in all different directions to get like a 3D image. And that was for 2022, and it showed a tree canopy of 40%. And so LiDAR is way more accurate. And so we're comfortable with the number being 40% as the current canopy. But what the iTree canopy is showing us is that the tree canopy is declining. We also did a much more detailed study using another tool called iTree Eco, where we had the software generates 200 random points throughout the city, and a field crew from BA Blackwell who worked with us on this, they're foresters and arborists. They went out to those sites, and within an 11-meter radius of each point, they did an inventory of every tree. And then when that gets fed back into the software, we get a lot of information back. So one is the distribution of tree species. So probably no surprise, coastal Douglas fir is your most common species at 40% of your canopy. Red alder is 11%, western red cedar is 13%, which is kind of an interesting one because western red cedar is very subject to stress that comes with climate change. So yeah, and you can see all the other trees. The other thing that software gives us is a quantitative valuation of the benefits of the tree canopy. So here you can see pollution removal. These are the sort of amounts for each of these, and then the value in economic equivalence. So carbon storage, carbon sequestration, oxygen production, avoided runoff, building energy savings, and carbon avoided. So the total replacement value based on that is $788 million, which just helps to justify the importance of retaining and protecting and planting new trees in the community. With the LiDAR data, because it's an actual aerial image of where all the trees are, we're able to do a bunch of analysis. So this map is showing you the tree canopy distribution, where the darker green color is trees, the lighter green is other vegetated areas such as grass or shrubs. And then you can also see the pink impervious areas, which are the areas where it's very difficult to, at this point, plant trees. Not impossible, but difficult. Okay. We looked at tree canopy percentages in relation to land use. And so you can see that obviously Royal Roads as one huge entity has a lot of forest covers. So it has a tree canopy of 80%, and we go all the way down to the industrial land that has a tree canopy of 7%. So the entire city has a canopy of 40%. We were interested in what it would be excluding Royal Roads and CFB, and that comes down to 31%. So you're, in a sense, your urban area has an overall canopy of 31%. Looking at tree canopy by neighborhood, you can see there's significant variation from Royal Bay at 19% all the way up to Royal Roads. We looked at tree canopy by ownership. And so because you have these very significant federal and crown areas, again, they're coming up really high because they're mostly undeveloped. What's most interesting here is that private land is at 31%, which is also your average tree canopy or canopy for the urban area, which pretty much makes sense. Municipal is at 43 because that's mostly parks. Even though there are quite a few trees in parks, there are also things like playgrounds and sports fields that are areas without tree canopy. And road rights of way have 21%. Okay. Can move on. We did, for phase one, we did a very coarse evaluation of projections. And to do that, we looked at the official community plan land use designations and where they were going to change. In other words, where an area that either has very low or no development now would be developed. And we projected the average tree canopy of those land uses. So you can see, for example, that light industrial is currently at 51%, goes down to 7%, and that's when it gets built out. There are a lot of parking lots and large footprint buildings. A seaside village, because it was a gravel pit, essentially becomes 19% with the trees that we expect to be planted during the development. So those are just a couple examples. So in phase two, we will do more detailed projections to just make this a little bit more credible. Okay. We ran an equity analysis, which looks at high equity need neighborhoods based on StatsCan data. And so what we're looking at there is lower economic brackets, higher percentage of immigrants. We look at Indigenous communities, etc. In many communities that have dense urban cores, there's a correlation between high equity need and low tree canopy. You don't have that in Colwood, and that's, I think in a sense, it's a good thing. And it's mainly because you don't have any very large, dense, urban high density areas. So that's how we explain that one. Okay, so moving on to the tree protection bylaw. In looking at your bylaw compared to some of the other municipalities, it's not doing the greatest job of protecting and enhancing your tree canopy. So we have a series of recommendations here to make it more effective. One is that the fees, for example, for removing our tree are incredibly low, and they're nowhere near what it would take to plant a new tree. And so we propose moving the fees to a separate bylaw that's reviewed annually, so your fees can keep up with changing costs. Increase the amounts for cash in lieu and securities as part of that. Reduce the security for tree retention, because right now it's a disincentive to retaining the old trees on a site, which are often the most valuable. Revise the protected tree definition to include all important trees. Your definition right now is really not protecting all of your trees that need protection. Expand the critical root zone definition for the area to be protected when trees are retained, because right now it's just not large enough to protect the roots. Revise the tree replacement minimum sizes and species. The tree protection barrier isn't that big a deal, but it's an unnecessary cost, we heard from the tree industry. Okay, next slide, please. Because there are more. Require a tree management plan in more situations. Review the criteria and practices for allowing tree removal, because again, right now, just about anyone could remove almost any tree. Expedite the process for hazard tree removals, and reduce fees and the process for trees that died of natural causes. There are also some practices that we'd like to change. These are not necessarily part of the tree protection bylaw, they're in addition. So establish a priority system for addressing complaints. This is to help your staff. Identify tree planting locations so that when you're looking at replacement plantings, you already have a list of where you could put them. And for other bylaws, you're lacking tree planting standards, things like minimum soil volume, growing medium quality, tree size, and appropriate species. And as a result, some of the planted trees are not doing well, and they're dying, some of them, which I even saw when I went on my tour there. So it's really, really important to have appropriate standards that are consistent across all your bylaws that mean that trees will at least have a good chance of growth and survival. Tree planting incentive programs are a great way to encourage tree planting on private property. Making sure that the provisions are consistent across all your bylaws, really, about tree protection and the urban forest. Okay. And so we're currently in phase 2, going through all these workshops, which is great to get the input. Based on this, we propose to make revisions or suggest revisions to the tree protection bylaw that are fairly wide ranging, as I just talked about. We're going to do more detailed tree canopy projections and scenarios. And part of the purpose of that is that in the urban forest strategy, we think it's a good idea to set a tree canopy targets for different land uses and for the city as a whole. There's a communications component to distribute this information out to the community. Then we will come up with a draft of the urban forest strategy, and then it will go out for community engagement, and then we'll refine it. So that's the presentation, and I would love to get any comments, questions, suggestions, etc.
Thank you for that presentation. Just gonna go to Carol, has some questions.
I'd just like to say, I think that's a very thorough report and really touches upon some areas that Colwood needs to look at and address. I do have a question for the city. I didn't see reading through the report, I didn't see any mention that the city has an established land acquisition fund that we maybe collect through our property taxes. And I'm just wondering the answer to that question.
I can try to answer that to the best of my ability. I know there is a Parks DC charges that we are in the process of. I think we're very close.
Hi, my name is Robert Earl, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Colwood. Maybe I can give that a shot. So the city has moved forward with a Parks Improvement Development Cost Charge. That is back with the ministry, and we hope to see its approval in the next few weeks. Immediately on the heels of that, we've begun the process for a Parks Acquisition Development Cost Charge, which will codify exactly what you're describing, Ms. Brown, that we will develop funds that we charge to the development community as they bring projects to bear. Those funds would be dedicated and mingled with taxpayer funds for the purpose of acquisition of lands that would be converted into parks, the various different types of parks, nature parks, community parks, sports fields, etc.
Thank you. I knew all that.
Okay, Katrin has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I apologize if I missed this. I always feel in this conversation there's an elephant in the room, which is what is the situation with development and preservation or reintroduction of trees. And by development in this context, I mean when natural land is changed into development, into buildings, nearly always with significant loss to the forest canopy. And I believe I read in your report that there is no commitment on developers to preserve any part of the forest canopy. Is that correct? And if it is correct, is that something that we can investigate and make some suggestions for change? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We do call it the elephant in the room every time we meet. Greenfield development is not kind to urban forest, and we are aware of it. I guess and it is a conversation that we have started with council through even densifying our Souk Road corridor and exploring and trying to understand where do we fit trees in a denser development context along corridors where we want to intensify the use of the land, and where we hear from the development side of things that flexibility and reduced setbacks and underground parkades that go to property line are a must requirement, then it leaves very little room for trees that would add substantive canopy to those developments. So there's definitely a tension between urbanizing and growing in a more sustainable way in a denser form. You are correct that currently there is no necessarily a goal or an objective for retention of existing forests through development. We do have a site adaptive framework that we use on greenfield sites and lands that are environmentally sensitive. So we ask that every developer engages on an exercise of inventorying the environmentally valuable portions of the land. And some of those could be a wetland that has limited to no tree canopy, but that becomes the most meaningful part of that development, the most ecologically sensitive area. And then we focus on restoring, maintaining, and protecting that asset, recognizing that we're looking on the greenfield sites, we're looking for protection of 40% of a site. So we protect 40% of the site, but that doesn't mean it's the most heavily forested 40%, is the most ecologically valuable 40%. And that could be a rocky outcrop. That could be hillside habitat. That could be a wetland that is potentially more ecologically valuable than the tree canopy. And it's all a bit of a value laden conversation. What is adding more value, but it is difficult conversations, and definitely ones that we have constantly with council through rezoning processes. And every time we consider development, bring it forward to understand what is it doing on the tree canopy side. What are we losing? What is the argument of a developer? And then the compromises that are made along the way to advance housing and hopefully achieve some of our other objectives.
Thank you for that clarification. Can I just make one quick follow-up comment, which is, thank you, and I do understand you are trying to serve several different masters here, obviously, with different goals. I think what is really difficult for citizens is to look at this bylaw and face, prospects of permits and fines, and then across the street there's a clear cut where a developer has permission to do that. I think in terms of really compliance and buy-in to the bylaw, it would be nice to see something a little more supportive on the development side. So thank you for taking my questions.
Thank you. I just had a question. I saw on the preliminary recommendations for the tree protection bylaw that it states to remove the tree protection barrier requirement. Am I wrong, or like in reference to the barrier, is that the barrier constructed around a tree to protect it when there's construction and like to protect it from damage during the site work and construction? Is that what that is?
Actually, Gord, do you want to answer that one? Because I had a question about it as well.
Yeah, I believe it's a good question. That came up with our when we had our workshop with the tree professional community, and I think what it is the tree care profession feels that it is the barrier around that says it's not, you can't go within a certain area. And I think it was the amount of protection that's required. So there are these big, quite rigorous fencing around the trees. That was my understanding, was that it was all you need is a barrier to say you can't go in this area, and it's almost like they're building these big huge walls, and there's a lot of that. And I think that was my understanding from the tree care professionals, that that's what that was. It wasn't to actually remove the barrier to say that you need this barrier, but to remove the what is required of that barrier.
Yeah, if I can add to that, actually, I don't think the intention is to remove the fencing. I actually thought it was an underground root barrier. So I think we need to look into that one a bit more and just clarify what it is. I mean, obviously you need to have the fencing or else you won't have protection. We've all seen development sites. So anyway, I think that's when we will look into that one in more detail.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That was my concern, is just that I think that orange fencing type thing kind of just shows the area. So I think it's helpful for anybody when they're developing an area. So I was just concerned about that. The other question I had was in regard to tree replacement, because the changing climate and that sort of, with sourcing trees, and do we have to look at different types of trees now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, we do, and we already do as well. A lot of our planting, so even a lot of our restoration plantings, we're looking at different types of plant material that will do well and that aren't invasive. But native species, climate change is an issue especially when you're planting, but the native species are still performing very well in our climate. So we're going to continue with that, and we're always looking for or accepting, different species that will do well and enhance the environment as well. I don't know if you have anything more on that, Catherine.
No, I agree. I think that the species are evolving. So, and it really just depends how quickly we want to change those lists. So for example, we generally are not planting Western red cedar anymore, unless it's a really shaded and damp location. Otherwise, they just aren't doing well. And then there are other trees that are doing really well. And so, yeah, it is an evolving list as all the trees are, their habitats are moving north. So, I mean, for example, the redwoods are now doing great here because they were in Northern California, and and so our climate is really currently what Northern California used to be, and they're just doing great. So it's an example of how the lists are changing.
Thank you for that. I think Carol just has a question here. Go ahead.
Well, it's more a comment. I just feel that this is the perfect opportunity to speak up for the trees. And I applaud any attempts to protect our urban canopy. When I first moved to Colwood about 43 years ago, and we bought our first home, I believe the city was called the City of Trees. I don't know if I'm mistaken, but that was our slogan when we were incorporated. And yes, we do need housing. And we do need density, but density in the right places. And I think we need to do everything we can to protect our urban tree canopy. It will, in the future, as we warm, it will provide us with shade. It will provide us with carbon sequestration. And any effort that Colwood can do to protect our trees is so, so important. I'm even wondering, I don't see it and I may have missed it, but I'm wondering if we can have some kind of regulation adjustments when a developer wishes to remove trees, that there is one regulation for the building footprint, but a different regulation for the surrounding land. So that, yes, where the building is, yes, of course, the trees have to come down, but the surrounding land, I watched a new building go up in Colwood where there was this beautiful maple tree and it happened to be in the parking lot. And so it was taken down because it seems that from what I observe, when there's land to be developed, in many, many cases, everything goes. And, I look at it now, the building is finished, and boy, I'm telling you, to have that maple tree in that parking lot would provide some shade for cars. And I can't really see why you couldn't give up a parking stall for that tree, but that's an aside. My point is, anything we can do to protect our trees is so crucial. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, discussion? No? Okay, thank you very much. And item 5.4, item 5.3, you're up again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I have much the same update for our pesticide use bylaw. There's not much more than other than it was presented to council, and it gives me the opportunity to present it now to the Parks Rec and Committee and Trails Committee. Just a bit of an update of where we are with the bylaw. This is a bylaw that that my team is really happy with. We feel it's good, it's strong. We're very happy with the integrated pest management policy that that accompanies the bylaw. It is on the Let's Talk Colwood page right now. I don't have data for that, but I'm hoping to bring that data to council. As well as we're in discussions with, and we'll be working with ByLawCA's part of one of the recommendations we got with this bylaw was to have an enforcement policy along with the bylaw, which will help the enforcement. Working on an education program. Normally how these bylaws have been presented and rolled out in other communities is to have a year of, as the bylaw is enacted, have a year of education for residents to learn about the bylaw, learn about alternative pesticides that they can use, and then have that year, and developing that education program is something that we're working on right now as well. And one thing that did come up, I think it was in the council presentation, was the exempt pesticides as well that are on there. That pesticide list is proving to be quite challenging. It is a list that is provided by the provincial government for the provincial government's exempt list for pesticides, and it's very daunting. There's a lot there, and a lot of it is refining chemicals, chemicals used in solvents, chemicals used in food, chemicals used in a number of ways. So it's going through that list and making sure that, you know, we're not banning chemicals that are used in daily life. It's been quite the eye opener for me as I go through each one of those and see how it actually plays out in our daily lives. So that's another thing, but we do see some domestic chemicals there that we are going to a more fulsome look at to see if we can actually even further, you know, reduce that list and bring that to council, because I know that was something that was brought up as well, as that the size of that list and the chemicals, and that's pretty much where we're at with the with that bylaw.
Thank you. Does anybody?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to see this draft bylaw come before the committee for feedback. So I encourage, if anybody does have any feedback, to speak to this today. It would be really helpful. I know that it's a long list. I have looked at some of the other municipalities' bylaws, and they do list restricted chemicals. And I'm wondering, there are two in specific that there are some community members that I've been working with that were really wanting to see highlighted on this bylaw, and that is, you probably know them, the Par3 and Killex were two kind of monsters that some of the residents would like to see highlighted. I don't know if that's possible, but I just wanted to bring that forward to you. And the other question that I had was, as far as the enforcement, I know that this is a reactive type scenario, but the $50,000 fine, is that something that you're seeing in some of the other municipalities? Like, is that what they're? I just noticed a fee or a fine attached to this. So I was just curious to know where that number came from.
That number came from when we write the bylaw, we definitely, you know, search through a lot of different bylaws and you know, take the best elements of those bylaws that fit with Colwood. So that did come from I can say that from the communities that I've researched with the pesticide bylaw, and from my colleagues in other communities that I've also talked with, is that these bylaws, the pesticide bylaw in most, if not all of the communities, was extremely well received. And if I can compare it to a tree protection bylaw, it's welcomed in the community. And I think what happens is, with that big education program, and people start to understand that they're not being, there's so much out there to do for that can take the place of pesticides and herbicides, that you don't see a lot of big fines, because you don't see a lot of you know, for your average homeowner, using pesticides in the way that would create a fine like that. So big fines, but yeah, I think that fine, and if I'm not correct, I think that's like it would be a repeated offender,
Right,
that sort of thing.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if I can just add that, yeah, again, I really appreciate all your work on this. And I would really love to see this, be adopted before spring. So that we can help all those bees. But I really do appreciate all your work on this, Gord. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can comment on the par 3, that wasn't from the permitted pesticide list, was it? It's just those are 2 chemicals that you've heard from that you want to ban, because par 3 and Killex would essentially be banned. Like you would not be able to spray par 3 or Killex without a permit. And then you have to apply for that permit. The city has to accept that permit, and normally par 3 and Killex would not be expected to be used on a residential property unless absolutely necessary, and that would have to include some invasive species, that sort of thing, and or like in sports fields, but even sports fields and golf courses are moving away from, I mean, it still unfortunately has to be used, but they're moving away and doing more sustainable practices to help with weed control. And that's essentially what those are, is par 3 and Killex are weed control. So gone are the days that you're spraying par 3 or Killex, which is a very common pesticide or herbicide used. Gone are the days that you're using that to, control dandelions in your yard.
Yeah, fair. I really do like the idea of providing the educational component and, sharing with the public, here's some pesticides that you may be using or have used, and here's what you can do instead. Something that is a little bit more environmentally friendly. But thank you.
Thank you. Judy, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I also have a huge issue with that long list, and I'm really glad that you're going through it one by one. And that's a huge job. I know, just trying to do it myself. But yeah, some of the things that are on there, like bacillus species, which will kill butterfly caterpillars, pyrethrins, which are toxic to bees, rotenone, which is a broad spectrum and will kill anything, spinosad, which I'd never heard of before, but is toxic to shellfish if it gets into the waters. So I think there are a lot of things that should come off of that list. And I know that they are approved for like organic farming, but farms are already exempt from this. And so for ornamentals, I think we could pare that way down. So thank you for your job on that.
Thank you. Yeah, parathids are definitely ones that I'm looking hard at as well, because unfortunately it's almost, they're considered almost a biological control, or but their target species, they kill so much more than that. So unfortunately, when we're trying to control aphids, we're not only killing with a paraffin, you're not only killing the aphid, the bees are very susceptible to paraffins, and as well as all the aphid predators, lacewing, ladybugs, all that stuff are also susceptible to paraffin. So that's definitely one, and as we go through this list that we're looking at to see if we can take off.
And I wanted to say also that I am really happy about the educational, to hear that there is an educational plan, because I think that will be more effective than a bylaw. And I didn't see anything in the report about, specifics about public education. So if you're working on that, that's super.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gord. Now we're moving on to item 5.4, Dunsmuir Sport Court update.
All right. Oh. Is that me or you? Okay. As you can all see, I'm not Ian. I'm presenting on his behalf. I'm Matt Blakely. I'm the new senior planner with the planning department. There we go. All right, so this presentation is to provide an update on the collaboration between the city of Colwood and the Souk School District to construct a new multi-sport court at Dunsmuir Middle School. Oh, sorry. Oh, now my clicker's not working. No. There we go. Okay. So I'll try to keep this short and sweet, but this project is the first project to come out of the 2021 partnership agreement between the city and school district number 62. This is a 4-year agreement that recognizes the potential to leverage municipal funding and underutilized school district owned lands to develop new recreational infrastructure for both school and community use. The overall goal is to seek, where possible, joint ventures that meet the community needs as represented by both entities. It sets biannual schedule of joint meetings between City Council and the school board. So research in support of the compilation of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan included a review of similar communities suggesting that Colwood is below average in the provision of outdoor sports courts, which is something this committee talked about earlier today. So also related, community surveys indicated approximately 75% support from respondents for new pickleball and tennis courts in Colwood. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan therefore set a goal for 4 to 6 new pickleball courts and 2 to 4 new tennis courts within the next 5 years. The Dunsmuir multi-sport court project was selected from several potential identified projects to in part meet this identified need. The Dunsmuir multi-sport court project therefore started in 2021 with an agreement for the city to cover the estimated construction costs of $500,000 and the school district to provide the land, manage the construction project, and the long-term maintenance of the facility. The project was completed almost a month ago to the day, and it consists of 2 tennis courts / pickleball courts, a basketball court, and on-site parking. So a joint use agreement between the city and the school district allows for the school to use school use only between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday during the school year, which is September to June. And then public use is permitted between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays, as well as 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends and school holidays during the school year. Summer public use is permitted throughout the week between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. And finally, next steps. So the next steps include the installation of signage that states the usage rules and an exploration of a booking system to better manage the use of the facility. The city and school district staff have received community feedback on potential usage rules and ongoing potential improvements to the facility. The school district will be adding an accessible basketball hoop in the near future to better serve the students and members of the public with disabilities. And finally, upcoming meetings between the school district and the city will seek to provide option for council's consideration for the next potential partnership project with the school district. Thank you. And I'll do my best to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No, I don't think there's any questions, but thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess that's it. So we're at item 6 and an adjournment. Can I get a motion for adjournment, please? Judy? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.